Good morning. Welcome to Clifford's Corner, encouraging, empowering, equipping, educating, and show enough entertaining you. That's what we do. Welcome to the show. I hope that everybody's enjoying their morning. Got a big show lined up for you today. First, we want to recognize our sponsor. That is Golden D Hairline Wigs, Weaves, Eyelashes, Eyelash Extensions, Hair Care Products, and more. Visit their website at goldendhairline.com. All righty. So, want to talk about our guest today. Our guest today is Richard Nava. Going to bring him in. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Clifford. How are you this morning?
Doing good, doing good. Richard Nava is from the Nava law firm. So tell our listeners, give our listeners a brief history about yourself, if you could, sir.
Yes, sir. So I am born and raised in Houston on the north side of town. I attended a college in Louisiana State University. Came back to Houston and went to South Texas College of Law, where I received my JD, and I have been practicing law for the last 10 years. And I have my own firm now, thankfully. And, you know, we've been pretty successful helping the community. I love to be in the courtroom, trying cases, helping people out, and I really enjoy what I do for the community and for everyone in Houston and actually all around Texas, because I am licensed all around Texas.
Okay, good. Thought I probably that shouldn't happen. So if my phone goes off for the listeners, I'm not smart enough. They call it a smartphone, but it's not in my hands.
Right.
Tell everybody what you spell. I know that lawyers have, or attorneys or lawyers have different specialties. So if you could give us a rundown of what you basically specialize in.
Well, yes, sir. So I actually do a lot of personal injury cases is probably what I try mostly. But we also do some family law. I've done a little bit of criminal for some DWI stuff that's come in through my door. And I have several lawyers at my office that actually practice in other areas, business, as well as wills, as well as, just the gamut of things. We do just about everything at my firm. So, but me personally, I'm more involved with the accident aspect of the business, plus the management side as well.
Okay. So since you said that, I'm just going to start with that. Let's talk about a will. Tell our listeners, when my mom passed away, we had a will. But I have some experience in the funeral industry, and I have seen where families have literally been destroyed from within for that very fact that they did not have, or the deceased did not have a will, and they wound up arguing over whatever was left. And the sad part about the argument, whatever was left was petty, arguing over a TV or things like that. So tell everybody, explain how the Texas law of descent works first. And then most importantly, I've seen this when they have a common law situation. Let me tell you this, Richard, this I have literally seen where the guy had passed away and he was not legally divorced. And I know the right for final disposition is given to the person that he's married to. So the girlfriend that he had been with for, years did not have any right to be over the funeral and all of that. And that created a big issue. So let's start with the will and how would someone achieve that?
Well, it's always good to have a will, even if you have very little property for that exact reason. In fact, a little story of my own, my grandfather passed away last year, and my family had a will, thankfully, but there was still some inner fighting amongst my aunts because I was the only grandson included in the will. So they didn't contest it, but but we still had, so I understand the fighting aspect among family members. If you don't have a will, the state basically has under the code will come out and say how it's distributed. Like you said, typically if you're married, it'll go half to your spouse or all to your spouse. If there are children involved, it has to be divided. First, it will go spouse, then it'll go for your children, and they'll have to split it in equal parts depending on the children. And then if there are no spouse, there are no children, then it'll go to the parents. And then from there, it just distributes down, brother, sister, and then aunts and uncles. And in fact, it will escheat is what they call it. to the state if you die without any relatives whatsoever. So the state can actually take your money at the end of the day. So that's why it's important to have a will, even if you want to will your money or belongings to a charity, as a matter of fact. So
right, right. So does the state, let's say it goes all the way down to the state level, is the state obligated to start locating? Do they locate next of kin, or do they attempt to locate next of kin, or do they just just take it, whatever the property is or money or whatever that it may be?
yeah, typically once it goes down to that level, it's really not their responsibility to try to locate family members. So they will take the property if it happens. It doesn't happen very often, but I know it does happen. And that's unfortunate because people that don't have wills, and it's so easy. And I will give your listeners one aspect. If you are on your deathbed or you fear that you are going to die soon, as long as you write on a piece of paper in your own handwriting and sign that, that could be considered your actual will. It's called a holographic will.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
So make sure to everybody that's listening again, our guest this morning is Richard Nava from the Nava Law Group. So I'm going to suggest, and Richard didn't say this, I'm saying this. So if you're feeling sick, get a piece of paper and leave everything. He said you can write on a piece of paper and put Clifford English's name on there. And I would suggest that needs to be notarized. Is that right?
Well, as a matter of fact, because it doesn't have to be notarized if it's in your handwriting and it's right prior to what you think is going to be your death. So,
right. Okay.
but typically, yes, you would want to get it notarized and witnessed. Mm-hmm. Typically, you'd want to set up and speak with a lawyer, because if you don't, again, you don't want to have people contest it. Right. But there's trust and certain aspects that you have to come forward with when you deal with a lawyer, especially with larger estates. So.
Right. So how far have you seen the contested portion of a will go all the way? I mean, how long? What's the duration of time that could possibly?
Oh, I mean, I've seen it go as much as 2 to 3 years, depending on the complexity of the estate and how much assets are involved. And earlier you mentioned just like the common law. So in Texas, there are 3 elements to common law marriage, right? Mm-hmm. One of them is that you live together for no amount of time, as long as you're living together. There's not a 1 year. A lot of people think that it's 1 year or more. It could be for 3 weeks. One of them is that you hold yourself out to be married as a married couple. And typically that's very fact intensive for the courts or for a jury to determine common law. That means that basically you've told your friends or you filed different documents like taxes together, and you intended to be married. And that's the third aspect, is you had the actual intent to marry each other. So right. People that are engaged are not married, but I have seen people fight over wills because just that reason. Look, you have a girlfriend you've been with for 5-6 years, someone dies in the relationship, and next thing you know, she's saying, well, you're going to leave me nothing, but we intended to be married. Well, if y'all didn't actually hold yourself out to be married, then you're actually could be declared not common law in Texas.
Right. And so that seems that it would go into some form of detail. So how do you hold yourself out to be married? Is that posting it on Facebook in a relationship, or is that an example, a good example?
Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great question too, and that's exactly right. The more you can, if you have friends, family that would come testify on your behalf and say, yes, we're married, and you just make that comment, then that could technically be enough. Yes.
Right. Okay. So I heard you mention that you handle wrongful death, and that's unfortunate when there's wrongful death caused by whatever way. Statistically, do you see a rise in those wrongful death acts? And then that's the A part of the question. The B question: how is it determined that it is a wrongful death accident?
So wrongful death is just a legal term that we give that when we file these types of cases, right? And so whenever somebody dies, obviously the families are typically looking for what happened and why that individual died. And so when I say wrongful death, and usually, and it could be from anything. It could be from a car wreck. It could be from at work on job injury. You know, obviously you can die walking out your front door, but the wrongful death portion of it means that we're actually bringing a case. The family is bringing the case on behalf of the estate of that person who died. So it would be a wrongful death claim. And the wrongful death beneficiaries, the only people in Texas that are allowed to bring those claims is typically the spouse and the parents. And the brothers and sisters can't even bring a wrongful death claim unless it's set up through an estate. And then they may be able to bring a wrongful death claim through the estate.
Through the estate. Okay. Okay.
Correct.
So is it generally that the wrongful death is generally something that's done? Let me say this. Let me say it this way. And I'm saying this. You're not saying this. It seems that people are Sue crazy. You know, that's SUE. And I guess that, and if you have a girlfriend named Sue, I'm not talking about her, but it seems that people are crazy. And there's not enough money to replace a life. I can, you know, that's not a topic of discussion, but is it for, I would think in my simple way of thinking, let's say if I was to die in an accident, I would think that my wife would sue someone to make sure the income that I am bringing in, that is the purpose of that. Is it always like that, or is it a I don't want to use the word get rich quick scheme, but that's what I want to say.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point and question there. So typically when somebody dies, as lawyers, you know, you always want to talk to a lawyer if somebody dies under some unusual circumstance, right? So if it's in a car wreck, most people don't realize that in Texas, the minimum limits for insurance is a 30-60 policy. So let's say you're on your way to the store, you end up unfortunately dying in a car wreck. Well, the person that hit you, unless they have a massive amount of money, if they're a doctor or a lawyer, it's lucky. Or if you're, you know, I wouldn't say lucky, but if it's an 18-wheeler, you know, obviously they have a lot more in insurance. But I have represented individuals, unfortunately, where they get, you know, the family members call me. In fact, I just reviewed a case the other day where a gentleman died on a motorcycle, and the insurance just tendered their limits of $50,000, and the family said, "Is this all my husband's life is worth?" And I said, "Unfortunately, the person that hit you doesn't have any real assets to go after." I said, "So really, you know, as individuals, as citizens, we should be protecting ourselves. So if your husband has the life insurance policy, hopefully that will cover. But I see it all the time. So, you know, for those families that are fortunate enough to recover some big money, is typically whenever you hear about plant explosions, 18-wheelers, but your run-of-the-mill car wreck case, no, it's just not, you know, it's never a good thing when anybody dies, you know, obviously. So I would recommend, again, so if any client comes to talk to me or any listeners out there has any questions, always ask a lawyer, because, you know, that you can always get set up with a term insurance policy or a whole or universal life insurance policy, because you just don't know. You can't plan for the future. So, you know.
Right. And I will speak to that. I know we're talking legal talk, but just about insurance, I've seen in the funeral industry where people come in and they fail to plan for death. Death is a certain thing. No one has ever outran death. That's something that's going to happen. And it just seems like people would, you know, you spend money on lottery tickets and all this other stuff. And, you know, and I'm not, you know, picking on anybody, but you ought to have some type of insurance set aside. And I do know that there are instances where, and more so than ever, where people don't have, you know, the financial capability to, and then, you know, they wind up taking, you know, the least expensive way to, you know, to make final arrangements for their loved one. I understand that. So when I had a listener or a viewer ask about a will, when you file a will, does it have to be updated?
Yes, I would say, you know, obviously, because once the person passes, always update your will to your wishes, because once you pass, that will is going to it's going to get distributed just how it is. So you can always make a codicil or a change to the will at any point in time. But I would always update my will, especially as you acquire more assets or property, or if you even lose stuff. You got to inventory all your stuff. So
Right. So let me ask you a question about a will. Let's say my wife and I have an existing will, and I'm picking on her because I know she's watching. Can my wife go down and find a lawyer and change the will and not tell me anything about it and make someone else a beneficiary or an executor or whatever the legal term is for that? Is that legal?
No, that's not legal. Not unless she has some kind of guardianship over you.
Okay, my wife is listening. Say that again because I want to make sure she heard you. That's not legal.
That is not legal.
She heard you. So have you ever seen where someone tried to alter a will, not necessarily a spouse versus another spouse, but tried to alter a will to where it eliminated someone from receiving the bulk of an estate or something like that?
Not to be coy or too funny, but I don't know if you've seen that show on Netflix where about the guy with the tiger.
I have.
So you have. So if you remember, and there was an episode where Carol Baskin, she actually there was some officers that said it looked like she had faked the signature, and the family got left out of the gentleman's will, and he was worth apparently like $20 million in the 80s. So that's how she got all her wealth. But yes, absolutely, it happens where people try to fake that, which I don't recommend anybody do that, because obviously if you do that, the court finds out about it. Right. That's a criminal offense to do something like that.
Right. So I want to talk about, let's go back to an accident where a wrongful death has occurred. You can't, well, let me ask it this way. This might be better. So let's say you have a business,
sure.
Be any type of business, and someone refuses to pay you and you try to drag them into court. I'm under the impression that you can't make them pay you. It's just a judgment. Is that correct?
So I get that a lot, actually. So I have a business right now that I've sued. They have not filed an answer on, and so I'm looking for a default judgment. They have been served. So what happens in that is it is a judgment, and a judgment is typically good for 10 years. But if there is enough property, then you could actually get appointed a receiver that could then contact the sheriff's department and come in and shut your business down. And they could sell off your assets for simply that business failing to respond to a lawsuit after being served with it. So if you own a business, I don't recommend you try to hide from a lawsuit. But as an individual, we call individuals with absolutely no money judgment proof. And so, if you have insurance, always notify your insurance carrier of any lawsuits. That way, it could just get taken care of, and they're going to defend you. That's why you pay those insurance premiums anyways. But typically, yeah, there are so many people out there. I always say it's like suing a bum. I'll sue whoever you want me to sue.
Right.
But you're going to have to pay me for it.
Right. Right. Let me pull over and recognize our sponsor. Our sponsor for today's show, Golden D Hairline, wigs, weaves, eyelashes, eyelash extensions, hair care products, and more. Ladies, go contact Golden D Hairline. Get those edges snatched. GoldenDHairline.com. Thank you for sponsoring the show. So, Richard, I want to talk to you about, we're back to, I'm stuck on these wheels. So is it necessary, let's say LegalZoom, I'm not promoting LegalZoom. Is that a legitimate, I know you mentioned that you can write it down on a piece of paper. Let me word it this way. What would you recommend? How would you recommend someone get a will and not necessarily have to go to, because getting a will from an attorney can be expensive?
Well, and that's actually not really expensive. So I at my office personally, we have some guys in there that will write up a will for less than $1,000. And they'll do payment plans as well. Right. Obviously, the more complex the will, the more I would recommend you obviously contact an attorney. But LegalZoom is not something that it's not bad, but it's also sometimes that stuff it just has the legal jargon that they came up with that doesn't really go to the client's wishes, and so you just have to be careful with what's in the LegalZoom document. I always recommend talking to obviously wherever your property is, you got to talk to like I can't tell you about California law, right? I'm not a California licensed attorney.
Mhm.
So that's where LegalZoom comes in, and they try to, put in a certain jurisdiction and, to comply with the rules of Texas. And I've seen some of that stuff. I mean, mostly it's decent, but I still always recommend somebody contact an attorney.
Right. Okay. So for our listeners and viewers, if they wanted to get in contact with you, give us some contact information, if you could.
Sure. So I am in the Bel Air area. I have an office in Bel Air, which is right there by the Galleria. And my telephone number is 713-661-9900. 4909 Bissonnet, Suite 100 is my address. And I also have an office in McAllen, which I travel to frequently off of Jessamine. But everybody can reach me at the 713-661-9900 number, as well as, you come in. You don't need an appointment. We do walk-ins. We take care of you as long as as long as an attorney's available. I have a great staff. You can reach out to us on Instagram and Facebook as well. So with any questions.
Okay, great. And let's move down the road to talk about criminal law.
Sure.
Oh, wait, well, let's talk about family law. Now, I'm going to use the word divorce. And by the way, we're not getting one. My wife's just like, just want to talk about divorces. They can be rather contentious.
Yes.
And when is the divorce attorney posturing to how should I say this? Me versus you. Let me get more. Let me get less. Who's going to pay for the house? I don't want to pay for the house while she's living in it, or vice versa. Give me some complex issues about divorce work.
Well, look, so I've been through one, unfortunately, and I would tell you this. I would say that, that's probably my least favorite of all of the studies and disciplines as far as law is concerned. And the reason being is because the attorneys always win in a divorce, right? And that's because we get to bill hourly. It can be very expensive, and typically the judge is always going to do things based on the best interest of any children that are involved. So it really takes it out of the parents' hands. And so the judge will make his decision based on what they think is the best interest of the child. And if it's just a division of property, judges really don't like to see people fighting over very minor things. So, I tell people all the time, look, try to make it work. Talk to a lawyer. Most courts are going to grant, a division of property that's standard, if and that we can get into property law with family law as well, where, as you're married, anything you purchase or obtain during the marriage is considered community property. So,
right.
And that's one of the things in Texas is that if you acquire it during the marriage, you are going to have to figure out how to divvy it up. So, right. but that's my 2 cents really is, okay. Please, if you can make it work without a lawyer, just, because it could be simple, and typically with a simple divorce where there's no children or there's no property, my firm will handle stuff like that for as cheap as $1,500, $2,000. For a simple, one hearing type divorce. Otherwise, if it gets complex and it gets heated and, oh my God, we want to split the dog because, then it, just things can get very, very heated, like you said, and it becomes ridiculous. But it's emotion rather than logic that people use during a divorce.
Right. I remember when I had hired an attorney from the town when I'm from to handle some situations for me, and I told him, I said, I said I would be great at the arguing part, and he said what you said. He said, but you wouldn't be good at the reasoning part. And of course, I didn't like that because he had my money in his pocket when I said that to him, of course. So when let's talk about property that is acquired. Let's say that I'm going to use this because I see this a lot. A sports figure, or I'm an actor or whatever, and I have billions of assets, and then I marry someone and we stay married a year or so, and then we split up. For the life of me, I cannot believe how someone would say that, we had a child and, now you want, $27,000 a month for child support and all this other stuff. You know, that is I can't believe that a judge would grant that. That's unheard of. Tell me how that works.
So in Texas, it's a little bit different. When you hear about those types of cases, especially with any celebrity or athletes, typically in California or other jurisdictions, which go based on how much income or your net worth is when they do child support division. In Texas, for one child, the maximum amount that any parent can actually get is, I believe, about $1,800. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's capped in Texas. So we're lucky in Texas as far as men go, because obviously the men are the ones that typically have to pay the child support to the wives or ex-wives, and so that's a little bit different here in Texas. And then it graduates higher as you have more children, and it's not really income based. So in Texas you could be a billionaire and not have to pay all that much money in child support payments, unless there's one caveat to that, and that's if the child suffers from some kind of infirmity or some issue, then they need more care. Obviously, the court's going to do what's in the best interest of the child. So.
Right. So, does the court? How do they determine? Does the court determine what's in the best interest of the child? Because I have literally seen where what I thought the court did was not in the best interest of the child. It seems in Texas, I could be wrong, that it leans toward the mother of the child. And that's just based on what I've seen. I haven't gone to a million court cases, so I don't know. But the ones that I have seen, I have seen where the custody of the child was given to a parent, and I'm not going to reveal what gender that I personally knew was not the best fit for the child, but they wound up, and I think it might have been because that particular child, a person that was trying to fight for custody, had an attorney and the other one didn't. So I guess my question would be, so having an attorney in a child issue, custody or whatever, would you suggest going in front of the Office of Attorney General without an attorney?
Absolutely not. I mean, you're not going to go into a courtroom. I mean, having an attorney is beneficial because they know the rules of the game, so you walking in blind, you're just going to get railroaded. I mean, a lot of people think they can represent themselves, and that's just not the case, unfortunately. And so I don't recommend, and you will see that happen sometimes. And that's just because, look, a lawyer knows what to say. They probably have a good rapport with the judge, so they're more believable. And they probably, have already coached the client on these things to say. But the judges typically take into consideration a list of factors that go into the best interest of the child. And it's pretty extensive, and I would say you're right. I mean, I have seen it too, where they kind of lean towards the mother, and
Mm-hmm.
but that just may be, I don't know. It just happens that way, I guess. I have seen it's the other way, but the majority of the times, yes, I would say that the mothers typically win because, look, there's a more nurturing, maybe that's something ingrained in us from early childhood. So that carries itself and lends itself to even court proceedings. But that doesn't mean don't put up a good fight if you think your child's in danger or whatnot. But again, I've been in a custody battle, and so what's always good for the gander is not always good for the goose.
Right. Correct. Again, yeah. Okay. So when we let's move down the road back to criminal again.
Sure.
So for criminal cases, I know it's not a good idea to represent yourself, but we talked for my listeners. Richard Nava is our guest from the Nava Law Group, and we talked off the air. And Richard did not co-sign on what I'm going to say. I said it about the disparaging in between how the judicial system works when you don't have an attorney, and that's necessary. That's not necessarily a white, black, brown issue, but there is a high percentage of people that look like me that are incarcerated across the United States. When we make up approximately, I'd say somewhere around 13% of the population. However, over 80% of people in jail look like me. So for anybody that's listening and said it's not a problem, I'm gonna say, you need to get your head out of your whatever. That has to be a problem, because I can go into a courtroom with the same charge as someone that does not look like me. And that person, we have the exact same criminal record, the exact same everything, go into the exact same court, exact same judge, and that person walk in there with a high priced attorney and get probation, and they're literally throw the book at me. Why do you think that happens?
I mean, that's a very political comment. I mean, look, there is this systemic racism across the country. I mean, we're aware of that, and the judicial system is not perfect. It's the best we have.
It is.
I think, though, that typically people that just, look, we all make mistakes, right? And a lot of people, look, and I'll tell you, my wife and I have been, she loves watching, what is it? First 48. It's, it comes on. She watches it and I watch it religiously. And I always tell her at the end, look, let's see the difference between what the white guy is going to get or the Spanish guy versus what the black guy is going to get. And, it's typically, there is a disparity there, unfortunately. And so, and I think it just depends on what region of the country you're in. Obviously, the South is still stuck in some old ways. And, and I think you watch that show and most people, they say things and they put themselves out there, and most people tell on themselves. And, whenever I look as a criminal defense, I've done some criminal defense, as soon as the officer asks you one question, you need to just say, can I speak to my lawyer? Do not give them any tidbit of information because they're not your friend. And the officers are doing their job, and that's to create a conviction, whether you're guilty of the offense or not. They want to close their case. So, but there is a disparity. I think the country needs to work on that. And I think to start that is, I think more Black and Hispanic and minorities in general need to show up for jury service. I have lost cases in Montgomery County where I had an all-white jury, and on a clear case where I thought I was 100% going to win, but again, I had a minority that didn't speak English. He didn't look like them. He didn't talk like them, and there was literally one Black gentleman and there was one Spanish gentleman in the jury pool, and I ended up with an all-white jury. And of course, you know what happens then.
I tell you this much, and Richard's not saying this. I'm saying that I don't want to face an all-white jury. I don't even care if
I'm the same way. Look, I'm a minority. I'm Spanish descent, and and I speak Spanish, and so I know. Look, I wouldn't either. I know that's a very scary proposition.
Right. It is, and that is something that in our community, Richard, the barbershop is like it's the place where everything happens, and we have gotten into heated discussions about how the same scenario came up, and that was a point where people were saying you get railroaded, but you guys are the same guys that when you get the summons to go to jury duty, you don't go. Not only do you not go to jury duty, you don't vote either. I mean, so
that's right.
As far as I'm concerned, you lose your right, to whine and complain when you don't, go to the jury duty and then go vote. So your voice heard. Because a lot of people say, well, my voice is not going to be heard. Well, one thing's for certain, it's not going to be heard if you don't go vote. You don't go vote. Yep.
And I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, that's it. Really is. It starts at the grassroots level. You need to be able to, if you're going to complain, you got to go do what's necessary. And that's show up at jury service. That's vote. I mean, look at what we have in office.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Donald Trump. I mean, whether you love him or you hate him, I mean, he's the president. But at the same time, and I don't always agree with what he does. I agree with some of his policies sometimes.
Right.
But if you're not for that, go vote, please.
Right. Right. And that is definitely an option. People have to realize how powerful they're voting. Okay, so if you're just now joining the show, again, Richard Nava from the Nava Law Group. We talked about wrongful death. We talked about car. 18-wheeler accidents. Now, let's talk about it if we're on a construction site, and I'm going to give you a scenario.
Sure.
I'm on a construction site and I'm carrying PVC pipe over to a house that's being built, and I slip and fall in a pothole that was dug out there and break my leg. Who's responsible?
That's a good question, and that's a tough one. So first of all, you'd look at the landowner and where you're at, and if that's a pothole that's dug and who it was dug by. So it's a very fact-intensive type of case where you have to find out who owns the land, who dug the hole. If it was dug by somebody from your company and they have workers' comp, well, your workers' comp has to take care of you. If it was dug by, let's say, a third party, like an excavation company, right? And they didn't warn anybody, they didn't have it, marked off for people to see, then it would be the excavation company's fault, and that'd be considered a third party, and that'd be actually a good lawsuit there.
Right.
Otherwise, if it's workers' comp, typically the workers' comp is going to have to take care of your injuries and pay your time off. Look, knowledge is power, and I always tell people, whatever situation arises, please call a lawyer, and just ask a simple question. I give free advice all day long. In fact, most of my clients that I settle their cases and, they make decent money off of, I tell them, look, if you go buy a car and there's a contract involved, call me, because there are things about that contract that you maybe be able to negotiate, or, I might be able to steer you in the right direction. Don't do something foolish.
Right.
So call me and let me help you out. And that's one of those scenarios too. If you're injured on the job, call somebody, because it may not just be purely workers' comp. It could be a third party involved, and you could have a legitimate claim against another company for something like a slip and fall. So
right. So I have a question. Do you see a lot where large companies, insurance companies where that same scenario happened, try to reach out to the person that was injured? So I'm in the hospital from slipping in that pothole or whatever, and then the company shows up with their lawyer before I even talk to someone and say, hey, we don't want to drag it in court. We're gonna, when there's a potential of $100,000 on the line, they walk in and say, we're going to cut your check for $10,000 right now. Sign here. Have you ever seen that?
Absolutely. And for all the viewers out there, and if I was in that position, that would be, if I saw somebody, I'm in the hospital bed and they come in and some guy comes in a suit offering me money, that immediately I would think, okay, this is weird.
Right.
And believe it or not, there's people out there that think that, companies and insurance companies have their best interests at heart. And that really is not the case. Unfortunately, they're trying to get off with the least amount paying as possible. They don't really care about you. They just care about their bottom line. So
right.
Always call an attorney. And yes, do not sign anything. Like I said, anything that they're going to require you to sign for any contract, please call an attorney. And you can get an attorney for as cheap as to review a document for as cheap as $150, so.
Right. So would that be a direct indication? You're in the hospital and a guy walks in and says, would that be an indication that that there's a lot of money at stake, for the simple fact that they're walking in and trying to get you to sign something without even talking to anyone, right off the bat? Is that an indication that, there might be a lot of money involved?
Yeah. Yes. If it's a company lawyer there, absolutely. There's no reason that a company lawyer should be at somebody's bedside or home, for that matter, unless they're trying to figure out a way to get you to do and sign off on something that you probably shouldn't. So, and not all the time would I say that if it's a safety or risk manager that comes in there, most of the time they may be just checking on you and want to update their file. But if there's a lawyer that walks in, that's circumspect. You should be immediately worried about what they want you to do.
Right. Okay. So again, Richard, give us your contact information and website if you could.
Yes, at www.navalawgroup.com. My address is 4909 Bissonnet, Suite 100 in Bel Air, Texas, 77401. I can be reached at 713-661-9900. And like I tell everybody, no call, no question is dumb. Please call me with any questions. I give free legal advice all day long, and I'm glad to be able to help the community in any way possible.
Right. And let's speak to that before I let you go. When I had a conversation with your wife, she talked about what you guys do for the community. So let everybody know that, not only attorney, but you're very heavily involved in the community as well.
Absolutely. So with COVID going on, we do backpack drives. So we gave away a bunch of about 100 backpacks in Huntsville, and partnered up with Coach down there. And we also do food drives and giveaways all the time for the community. I mean, during COVID right now, I know a lot of people out there are hurting. So
right.
I'm more fortunate, so I'm willing to donate and share and help out in any way possible. So, and if anybody, like I said, has any questions or problems, or please call me.
Okay, great. All right, Richard, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been great. We've had some great information. So again, everybody wants you to say goodbye to Richard, and we will talk to you later. Thanks for coming on the show, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford.
Right,
we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so again, we had Richard Nava on the show today, and we just want to make sure that everyone realizes that you can call his law firm. He did say that he gives out information that is free information. Of course, consult an attorney because you never know what your case may bring. Want to spotlight our sponsor, Golden D Hairline, wigs, weaves, eyelashes, eyelash extensions, hair care products, and more. Visit their website at goldendhairline.com. Again, we want to thank Richard Nava for coming on the show. And let me leave you with this thought. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. Thank you. Have a good day.